Well, welcome everybody. I feel so privileged to be here today. It's an absolute honour to host this event with University of Exeter colleagues and all of you that are here today. It's been such a journey since 2016, and testament to everybody in the room here and all our other colleagues that can't be here, to families, to young people, to everyone involved in this journey, and what a journey it's been. Today is all about celebrating that journey and thinking about how we go forward from here, because it is an ever-evolving journey, but it really is a celebration of what everybody's achieved and the difference that everybody's made to young people's lives and the care that they receive. But it's fabulous, and that has all been down to that collaboration. I think the key thing to the success of the CWP role is all down to that collaboration, right from commissioning of the training programme, to the development of the role, to the service providers, to the children and young people themselves, HEIs. Every single person that's been involved in this journey has made it what it is. My name's Elaine Bowden. I'm Programme Lead in the National Mental Health Team at the newly formed NHSE Workforce Training Education Directorate. I've been on this journey with a lot of you since beginning of 2018 now. And my team is responsible for the commissioning of the education programme and the development there, working with everybody in the room and not here, and huge thanks to those that aren't here with us, particularly one of my colleagues, Dominique Henson, who can't be here today. Peter Fonagy will be here later to talk to you all around about the journey going forward as well, so he'll be joining us a bit later on. But yeah, welcome everybody, and thanks for travelling. Those of you that have travelled from Liverpool, Leeds, Exeter, wherever you've travelled from, and just special thanks to Beth and Laura, who've been putting everything together for today. Really grateful for that. Thank you. Okay, this is your day. This gives you the layout for the day. You've all got it in your pack, so you'll have that to hand. I won't go through it, but it's going to be a really exciting day, and you know, the breadth of the information that we're all going to share together and the celebration is phenomenal. So I won't go through that, but you have it there. Well, if I can move it on. So I'm not going to linger, because all of my colleagues here have got, and all of you that are speaking as well, have all got so much to say and so much more to give than I have. I just want to give a tiny bit of context to what the journey. You know, we started off with a policy of the 5-year forward view in 2016, which it provided us with that base really around indicating that we needed a trajectory of growth across all children and young people's services and all training programmes. So we worked really hard on the development of this new role. It made it clear that the workforce needed an additional 1,700 practitioners over the next 4 years. To close the gap really between demand and provision. And we were really clear from that policy statement about the evidence-based mental health treatments for children and young people that were required, hence the thinking around development of this role. Then we had the NHS long-term plan in 2019, and mental health implementation plan, which further outlined the need for the ongoing expansion of the children and young people's mental health workforce. And we've come so far since that point. With our census a couple of years ago, we knew we'd grown the workforce by 40%, but actually, and this role has contributed tenfold to that, but there's so much more that we still need to do, and we're all very well aware of that. It is a really long journey we're still on. These reports challenged us at the time, and it was a step change to the accessibility of support for children. And as I just referred to, that continues to be a challenge, because we're ever evolving, and this role is ever evolving and is so pivotal to the whole workforce of children and young people. It is a piece of that jigsaw or cog in the wheel. Every single role within the children and young people's workforce is that, and is as important as each other. But we are ever constantly wanting to develop that role, and it's so important that the CWP role is one of the bedrocks to the transformation agenda, and we have evidence. You will see that today as we talk, as colleagues talk and share with you. In terms of the wellbeing practitioner's role, sorry, I wasn't sure if my slide was there. It was at the time such a new and innovative role, a training scheme to create a new type of psychological practitioner, capable of delivering high quality evidence-based interventions to mild and moderate, to meet the need for mild and moderate mental health presentation that could be effectively brought to scale, and that's what I think we've done, and that's absolutely evidenced, and it will be evidenced further today. I won't linger on that one because I know all my policy colleagues are going to talk at length, so I will move us on. Sorry, not really. Spot the person that's not technical. I just finally want to talk to you about the growth of the training programme. We started off in 2016-17 with 7 university providers who did a most amazing job of developing this training programme and working with the whole system to do that, with 7 providers with 30 places on each programme. And over that journey, we've grown now to almost 500 places a year across those providers, so all testament to everybody involved to ensure that we can grow the workforce within CWP, and also looking at the career trajectory going forward, and the senior practitioners, the supervisors, all of those roles. So I'm going to go now. I've spoke too much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I look forward to meeting you all at some point during the day. And just huge thanks to everybody who's been involved in this journey, and long may it continue. Have a fabulous day. I just want to introduce the most important people today, and that's the children and young people that are going to come up now and just talk us through the day and support the whole delivery. Welcome.
Is it working?
I think so.
I'm a bit small, sorry. Hi everyone, I'm Mel and this is Winter. We are from the Midlands Young Advisors and we're aged from 16 to 25, and we all have a passion for improving mental health services and mental health in general. Some of us come from lived experience and some of us have experience of supporting a loved one. We do lots of work within the CYP Act collaborative, such as being the actor for the CYP acting exams in Northampton University. More recently, we have been involved with writing a chapter for the Participation in Children's and Mental Health book. We are undertaking a project training mental health ambassadors within school at the moment, which is a really exciting opportunity. But for now, let's get on with today's event. The next speaker is talking about children's mental health practitioners and the transformation of children's and young people's mental health care. The speakers are Sheena and Alex, both from NHS England, and Catherine from the University of Exeter.
This talk will cover CYP mental health context and focus on the CWP role and its journey from inception to date. You'll also gain some insight into the impact, opportunities and future planning of the CWP role and their important contributions to the CYP mental health workforce. There's a lot of acronyms, in case you didn't notice already. And their impact, contributions to the CYP mental health workforce and transformation of the CYP mental health care.
Hi, and we are delighted to be here. It's very anxious making, but also a real privilege. So thank you very much for the really warm introduction to the young advisors. We'll start by just introducing ourselves, and then we'll talk you through our presentation. So I'm Sheena Gohal. I'm the National Service Advisor for Children and Young People's Mental Health Policy Team in NHS England.
I'm Alex Goforth. I'm a Programme Manager in the same team as Sheena at NHS England, and I lead on workforce, which is why I'm really here.
And hi everybody, I'm Gallop. So as the young people said, I work in Exeter, overseeing a lot of the clinical training there, but I also work for the Psychological Professions Network, which is very much about celebrating and bringing together all the different psychological professions, including CWP. So really happy to be here presenting today.
Thank you. We're probably going to hold the mic because we've got to look up at the screen and try and look at you at the same time. So our young advisors have talked you through what to expect from our presentation today. So we'll talk to you a little bit about the transformation journey for children and young people in mental health. We'll then go into the increasing demand of mental health and the contribution of CWPs in the workforce. And then we will talk to you about future opportunities for the CWP roles. So just to take us back to 2015, really, where the journey began, so where the transformation journey really began for children and young people's mental health, you'll see that it started with future in mind and then moved all the way through to the NHS long-term plan. All of these policy documents have had a real clear overall ambition, and the ambition is that every child and young person with mental health concerns will have access to the right care and have support to achieve their goals and life ambition. The principles embedded within all of these documents and will resonate with all of our CWP colleagues today are that we would deliver evidence-based practice, that we will have outcomes-informed treatment, and we will have robust supervision across our CYP services, but most importantly that we'd have authentic co-production with our children, young people and families. What we recognise is, in order to achieve all of those ambitions and those principles, it requires our mental health services to do things slightly differently. And what that means is we want to build better mental health care for our children and young people. We want to improve the outcomes and experience for children, young people and families accessing care. We want to increase access to service provision. And we want to reduce health inequalities, which is really important. There's a continued focus across all of these policy documents on early intervention and prevention, and there's real investment in the workforce. And again, that links directly into our CWP colleagues and the investment in the CWP journey for children's mental health. So just to draw out the NHS long-term plan, so in 2019 there were a set of ambitions that we had committed to across the country. There are many ambitions for children and young people's mental health. The ones that we're just going to pull out for you are the ones that we feel are most relevant to the CWP journey today. So there was a commitment in the long-term plan to increase access for children and young people being able to access NHS-funded care by 23-24. There was a commitment to increase mental health in schools teams across the country by 2024 up to 25%. So we'd have 25% of coverage across the country for mental health in schools teams. There was a commitment that digital therapies would really start to help us to think about how we are offering and delivering care to children and young people and shape part of our clinical pathways. And last but not least, there was a commitment to really think about how we support our vulnerable children and young people, those that may be have learning disabilities or autism, those that may need support for complex trauma, those that may be open to youth justice services. And what you'll see is that all of these areas of commitment absolutely draw into where our CWP roles are. Thinking about health inequalities and the wider commitments, having our CWP colleagues really out there in services, being able to support our children and young people with vulnerabilities. It's really important. All of the commitments are surrounded by that circle in the middle, which is us being able to deliver a real comprehensive integrated care offer for our children and young people. So really coming together as a system to think about the care that we provide. So all of those commitments in the long-term plan were supported with investment. So the investment has enabled us to really think about how we achieve some of those ambitions. And what this slide demonstrates is just the continued investment over the last 5 or 6 years into children's mental health, which is really, really encouraging and necessary. What that investment has allowed us to do, and again, you can see there are a number of areas that it's enabled us to support children and young people. And again, what we're going to do is just draw out the ones which feel that they're most connected to our CWP colleagues. So the investment has allowed us to make significant progress since 2016. We've had over 700,000 children being able to access NHS-funded support through new investment. Since the start of the long-term plan, we've had more than 35% more children being able to access care, so that's 2019. We've had 35% of the school-age population be covered by our mental health support team, so we've exceeded the ambition of 25% of coverage across the country. And what we have, which is the one which I hope resonates with you all, is the workforce. The CYP mental health workforce has increased by 46% since 2016. And a large contribution to that is our CWP colleagues.
Put the glasses down. So, some really clear progress, both in terms of investment and expansion, and everybody in this room has been, played a really important part of that. However, it's definitely a job begun, not done. And the context that you'll all be fully aware of is the increased need and prevalence rates that children and young people are experiencing in terms of mental health difficulties and probable mental health disorders. So this slide shows you the year-on-year increase that we're seeing in terms of those prevalence rates. We know that there has been an acceleration in that growth of prevalence. So there's been a 50% increase up to 2021 in the previous 5-year period, whereas in the previous 13 years, it was more like 10%. So we know that need not only is increasing, but there is acceleration in terms of that need. We also know that certain groups of young people, and this slide shows the 17 to 19-year-olds in particular, but there are other areas of growth as well where they're showing particular pockets of increase. And it's not surprising, therefore, that CYP mental health services have seen a really big increase in referral rates over this last sort of 5-year period. And whilst we have grown and whilst we have been able to offer more young people access, we're not meeting that kind of current growth in referrals and need. And it still remains, over 60% of young people aren't able to access, unfortunately, care when they need it most. So, I've gone backwards. That's never a good thing. There we go. So in that context, it really does need a collaborative effort, and the NHS, in its sort of simplest sense, cannot do this alone. And you'll see the slide highlights the different ways of collaboration and the different organisations and systems that need to come together to work as effectively as possible to really try and effectively meet this treatment gap. And again, you'll notice we've highlighted the ones within that are relevant to CWP and the CWP role. And there are many of those when you start to look at the community assets where our CWPs are located and the large number of community organisations that are part of today and the wider national programme. But also some of the public services as well, where we know CWPs have and continue to work really effectively, both in terms of education and also social care as well. And at the heart of that, that sort of collaboration has to be co-production with children, young people and families. And you'll know that from the very start that has been, and you'll have seen it in the policies, a principle that has been truly embedded in the CWP role and in terms of how it's working out in all these different systems of care. So it's been there from the start, that principle, and the ability for the CWP role to work within all those different settings has very much been there from the onset as well. But next steps are really about trying to drive that even further forward. So some of you will know by now that we've looked to extend the training of the CWP practitioners, very much trying to develop and further enhance the influence it can have in community and voluntary sectors, but also, really importantly, trying to keep driving forward the co-production work and the participation activity that is so important in terms of supporting access and also reducing stigma. So that slide just shows you some of the new, in our talk, learning objectives that are in the curriculum, but importantly shows you the impact that the role is going to continue to have and develop into in relation to community and participation work.
So I've got a couple of wonky slides now, and I'm going to use my auto cue rather than sort of ad-libbing as you've done very impressively. So these slides are basically where do CWPs work, who are they, and what's the scale of the workforce? And Elaine has kind of already spoken to some of that, and I'm going to go into a bit more detail. So where do you all work? I mean, it would have been easier just to kind of ask you all, really, and much better than the kind of quality of the national data that we have available to us. The best kind of indication that we have is the experiences survey, which some of you might have completed last year, and it suggests that as CWPs, you're pretty adaptive members of the workforce. Around half of you are based in community, children, young people's mental health settings. A fifth are in MHSTs. And then you're also sprinkled across a range of voluntary and children's services, including early help and early intervention services. And if you want to look at more of that kind of data, there is a report on that on the Future Collaboration platform, which is really interesting, if I do say so myself. Okay, now you won't be able to see this at all, which is, oh, maybe, okay. So this is from the same data set I was just drawing from. It suggests that CWPs are a more diverse group than the wider workforce. They tend to be a bit younger. I think we can all sort of see that. They tend to have more diverse sexual identities. Some of the data suggests that while CWPs are more diverse in terms of gender, with more trans and non-binary people going into the roles, a higher proportion tend to be females than the wider workforce. Also really obvious. A smaller proportion also report than the wider workforce having a disability, though I know that there's some data that contradicts that, I think, from Exeter in the southwest. Next slide. So more on demography. CWPs tend to be more diverse ethnically than the wider population, but similar to the wider workforce if we look at the NHS benchmarking data and kind of combine it all across the different sectors. Somewhat less diverse in terms of religion, faith or belief, though categories are not entirely comparable with the ONS, so in comparison to the kind of wider population, but it suggests that fewer CWPs are Muslim or Hindu or Sikh than the whole population, so we need to do better in terms of widening the workforce in that sense. And a high proportion report being atheist or agnostic or having no religion. So that's pretty interesting, I think. Now, a bit about the kind of size and scale of the workforce. This is more data from the 2022 benchmarking survey, which Elaine referred to, and it reported the NHS workforce as being about, wow, we don't have much time left, 16,500 whole-time equivalents, and including all the sectors is about 20,500. But it reported the CWP workforce as being 355 CWPs, along with 87 vacancies, which works out as about 2.5% of the workforce, which I think is, you know, probably as many people are in this room, so probably an underrepresentation. Next slide. So Elaine mentioned the numbers of CWPs that have been trained, and the annual cohort size is really big. I think one of the problems that we have is that as CWPs are pretty adaptive, and you've been around for quite a few years now, you've gone off into loads of different other roles, and you're not called CWPs anymore, and you've also gone on to possibly bigger and better things, or kind of more low-intensity work in more senior roles, and that's great. The CWP role is absolutely crucial for us to expand the workforce over the course of the future. This is my last slide. This is probably the wonkiest slide in the pack. So this is some of the NHS planning data. I think it's really interesting, and it gives us a bit more of an accurate sense of the scale of the CWP workforce. So it indicates that there's about 900 CWPs qualified in training or senior, with about a third of those in non-NHS settings and about 10% of those in non-mental health settings, by which I think it means children's services. And this is kind of data collected from ICBs essentially. So not entirely accurate, but a pretty good indication. Systems are also reporting there's fairly substantial vacancies of around 11%. You might be feeling that, and that's actually slightly less than the kind of vacancy rate for the wider NHS workforce or the wider system workforce. So this suggests that the CWP workforce is more about 4 or 5% of the total workforce, and given the things that the Psychological Professions Workforce Plan says, you might have seen that, and the recently published NHS Long-Term Workforce Plan, there is no doubt that the CWP workforce will continue to grow.
So, as Alex just mentioned, the Psychological Professions Network Workforce Plan. So we've been working really hard to bring together all the different psychological professions, and there is a taxonomy now which really clearly outlines those. Within those groupings are psychological practitioners, and you as CWPs are very much part of that psychological practitioner group and sit alongside other psychological practitioners such as the adult psychological wellbeing practitioner, the education mental health practitioner, and the newer mental health wellbeing practitioner. So we're very much wanting to make sure you see yourselves as part of a bigger family, which we hope will not only support increased access for children and young people, but also importantly support your own development and ongoing sustainability in these roles, which are so important as part of this family. Within that context, we've also looked to think about quality assurance and also professional registration for you as a role. So we've worked with the BPS and the BABCP to develop training accreditation standards, which all the HEIs have submitted to be accredited. And as a result, the BABCP and BPS were able to launch their register earlier this year. In terms of why we've done this, there are sort of strategic and also individual reasons really, but ultimately we're trying to support protection of the public, we're trying to support the enhancement of professional standards, and we're also trying to make sure we can sustain and support the development of individuals in those roles. So there are a number of different benefits, both at kind of organisational levels, but really importantly to the individuals and yourselves that are here in the room that are actually the CWPs, in terms of ongoing registration and CPT and development. And you'll hear a bit later from Peter about some of the future developments, but one of the things we've been working really hard at is also thinking about how we can support development in roles, but also do that in a way that makes sure we're addressing the needs of the children and young people in terms of that early intervention space and extending the reach of the CWP role, given how successful it's been. So the Senior Wellbeing Practitioner, the SWP role, was launched earlier this year, and it's looking to try and enhance supervision and supervision capacity, but also some really important areas of work in terms of working with young people that have neurodiversity, and also working into some different enhanced areas of practice that aren't covered by the initial training that CWPs receive.
We had our 1 minute warning about 5 minutes ago. 2 slides. So just to build on what Catherine and Alex have talked about really is just to give another example of where our CWP colleagues and roles have really contributed to integration across children's mental health. So you'll see in primary care settings there was investment put in and to improve the integration across primary care and mental health settings. So what you'll see here is on the right-hand side, the roles that have contributed to that integration include our children's wellbeing practitioners, which is really encouraging and positive. What I won't do is go through the rest of the slide given the time, but you'll have this in your slide packs. So then just to summarise, what I hope we've demonstrated today is that CWPs make a significant contribution to our overall ambition to support children and young people achieve their goals and their life potential. What we are really clear about is that our CWP roles and colleagues have contributed through transformation. You know, the transformation journey that children's mental health has been on has been crucial for CWPs with us. We've really been able to think about increasing our access and early intervention through our CWP roles. And the CWP roles have been really central to us being able to collectively have a system-wide effort to supporting children and young people. We've been able to grow and diversify the workforce, which when we think about health inequalities is absolutely critical for what we provide and support our children and young people with. And last but not least, our CWP roles, as Catherine has described, really creates opportunities for us for continuing to grow our workforce and continuing to have really positive impacts across children's mental health. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. It's very strange to speak into a microphone, but here we are. So my name's Sarah and this is Annalise, and we are also Midlands Young Advisors. You can tell who we are by our t-shirts, hopefully. So it's this lovely green colour. I myself wouldn't have picked green, but there we go.
Didn't have a choice.
Anyway, moving on. So the next talk we're going into is the Anxiety and Depression in Young People, another acronym here, ANDY, Research Clinic, so the role of children's wellbeing practitioners.
And this is by Dr. Ray, Callum and Claire, and they're all from the University of Reading.
And they are going to provide an overview of the work of the ANDY Research Clinic over the past 6 years, with an emphasis on the key role of CWPs, another acronym. They will also speak about exciting new service developments and future directions for research. Thank you.
Let's see how long it is before this computer falls off the lectern. We'll do our best. So we've had to switch up our presentation a little bit from the one that we planned, because unfortunately Claire's not able to be here today, but it's Callum and I. So my name's Dr. Ray Percy. I'm a clinical psychologist by background, but I've spent most of the past 18 years involved in child and adolescent mental health research in one way or another. And we're going to be telling you a little bit about the work that we've done at the ANDY Research Clinic in Reading over the past few years in our talk today. I'll let Callum introduce himself. So Callum, if you'd like to come up and introduce yourself too.
Hi, my name's Callum. I've got 2 roles. I'll talk a bit about that later today. I'm basically like a clinical research technician, another acronym we like to throw in, and a CWP as well.
Thanks, Callum. So we've been asked to give you a bit of an overview of what we do at the ANDY Research Clinic and the central role played by CWPs. And because this is a conference for CWPs by CWPs, I think I'm going to allow Callum to do most of the talking today, so I'm going to kind of get off the stage shortly. But before I hand over to Callum, I thought it might be helpful if I just give you a bit of context and tell you broadly about what we're doing in the ANDY Research Clinic, which we'd refer to as a research-ready service. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about what that means today, and then thinking about how we might be able to benefit from research-ready services in the CAMS low-intensity sector, which is where we're now working, where CWPs are so often based. Trying to operate 2 of these things at the same time. So I'll start by briefly going over some of the ground that's already kind of been gone over a little bit today, but I won't dwell on that for too long, just to be clear about the broad backdrop against which we're operating in this early intervention part of the CAMS world. So we've had some conversation about policy documents, but I guess the bit that wasn't picked out of the previous two talks was that along with the wider range of commitments that were made within the policies that have been introduced over the past few years, was a commitment to improve our understanding of child and adolescent mental health through research. And these commitments to improve understanding through research aligned well with the aims of the Andy Research Unit that already existed at the University of Reading around the time that some of these policy documents came out, so kind of 2016, 2017. And around that time, the research unit at Reading was led by Professor Cathy Cresswell and Shirley Reynolds, along with some other academics, including Polly Waite, Laura Pass, Claire Hill, and we've got Tessa Reardon here today as well. And like soon after, kind of early 2017, our kind of Andy Research Clinic was born. So as a research-ready service, research is our priority, and it's factored into pretty much everything that we do, from kind of service design, service planning, delivery, and evaluation. Like being research ready isn't just about being evidence-based. So for example, like the organisation and staffing structure is very much research driven. So for example, like being based in a university setting or being closely aligned with an academic research team with access to all of that great research infrastructure and academic expertise. Both current and anticipated research plays a key role in shaping how the service is run and delivered. So for example, assessments and treatments often happen in the context of clinical trials that determine how, when, like by whom and to whom interventions are delivered. And because we're research focused and very much outcomes driven, in line of course with the wider CWP objectives, we're really well positioned in our research ready service to kind of quickly translate research into routine clinical practice, but also to translate the data that comes out of routine clinical practice into new research ideas and objectives. And because kind of all stakeholders, like within this research-ready setup, have agreed to prioritise research, we're not always under the same pressures as conventional services to do things like hit national targets, for example, on waiting times. Of course, we do have targets to hit as an NHS-funded service, but this flexibility and stakeholder buy-in means that we've got some flexibility to do things differently and respond quickly to new research opportunities. So importantly, in a research-ready service like ours, research objectives can almost always be achieved at the same time as making a valuable contribution to the community that we serve, but also to the wider CAMS network. So, for example, by providing opportunities to upskill the workforce and to treat young people who'd otherwise be seen on long waiting lists elsewhere. Just slide forward. So I mean, the objectives of the service that we're offering are very much in line with the broader CWP objectives. So through research, we want to increase access to evidence-based psychological treatments, but to do that through clinically relevant research. So it's research that's going to help us identify problems early and to treat problems promptly and effectively. It's all about kind of getting more effective, more accessible interventions out there. But also within the Andy Research Clinic, we're there to provide training and development opportunities for trainee CWPs, qualified CWPs, and other clinicians and researchers along the way. In terms of what we do, when we think about it from an assessment point of view, what we do is quite different to a lot of services and is directly influenced by our research objectives. So everyone referred into our service is offered the opportunity to receive a fully comprehensive diagnostic assessment, and the tools we use for that are the ADIS and the KSADS. We've actually done some research into the acceptability of this to children, young people and families, and the findings are that actually these kind of comprehensive, quite labour-intensive assessments are highly acceptable and tend to be like very much valued by the people who are receiving them. In terms of the interventions that we're offering, bear with, these currently fall into three broad categories, each of which has direct links to either past, current or future research. Like some of these interventions, I think most of you will be very familiar with as they feature on the curriculum across some of the CYP training programmes. So we've got, of course, the Helping Your Child programme that was developed and evaluated by Cathy Cresswell and colleagues in the early 2010s in a previous iteration of the research clinic. This intervention's recently been turned into an online programme that was developed by Cathy and Claire Hill, known as Aussie, which some of you might be familiar with, which is now being evaluated evaluated nationally in CAMS via a clinical trial known as COCAT. Kathy and colleagues are also now planning to adapt this intervention for other populations, so for example, children with OCD and with autism, and to evaluate these new interventions through trials hosted in the research clinic. So the next one on this slide is ACTA, or Adolescent Cognitive Therapy for Anxiety. This is a transdiagnostic treatment developed by my colleague Polly Waite and was evaluated in a trial through the clinic, the results of which will be published soon. Polly subsequently developed a version of this transdiagnostic treatment for adolescents with panic disorder, which is also evaluated through a trial in the clinic that's referred to as PANDA. Again, the findings will soon be published, but the findings are encouraging that these kind of brief cognitive interventions for adolescents are effective. Alongside these two trials, Polly and some of her collaborators have collected data to start shedding light on some of the cognitive processes thought to maintain anxiety, which will inform the development of other new or improved interventions. The final one on this slide here is brief behavioural activation, which was developed by Laura Pass and Shirley Reynolds and initially piloted both in the clinic and in schools in Berkshire. This treatment is now ready to be subject to some more rigorous evaluation, for example, through a randomised controlled trial. So I think just to kind of sum up this slide, like the research that's led to the development of these interventions has and is continuing to inform what's being taught on training programmes for new CAMS practitioners, including CWPs and EMHPs, and what's being delivered in early intervention services across the country. And it's fair to say that CWPs in our team have played a really critical role, for example, by supporting the recruitment of participants into research trials, or by being therapists on clinical trials, or by carrying out diagnostic assessments, administering research measures, like an absolutely key role. And the success of the Andy Research Clinic is very much based on the hard work and the commitment and the skills of its CWPs, and we certainly value that within the team. Like so much so that we're now in the position where we're able to launch a new Andy Research Clinic service in collaboration with the University of Oxford and Oxford Health, which is going to double the capacity for research over the next 5 years and hopefully beyond that. In terms of areas of research that we're hoping to get into, I've kind of referred to that a little bit already, so hopefully to kind of adapt some of these interventions in line with the senior CWP role, so brief interventions for young people with OCD, but also thinking about how we might adapt existing interventions for underserved populations, including those with autism. So again, there are gaps still here in the research literature. That's definitely enough from me, because I've had my 5-minute warning, and Callum needs more than 5 minutes for sure, but the last guy's had a few extra minutes, so I'm going to hand over to Callum now, but thank you for listening to me, and Callum's going to tell you a bit more about his role. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to speed run then instead. Is that the right way? Perfect. So as Ray mentioned before, Claire was supposed to be here as well, another CWP in the service. So you've got double of me in 5 minutes as well, talking about the two different kinds of roles I have. So working both as a children's wellbeing practitioner, operating, doing like the treatment interventions that Ray just mentioned, completing the diagnostic assessments, and also in a slightly more senior role, like supervising risk and things. I'll talk a bit more about how being a CWP in a research-led service works and looks a bit differently than it might do in other services. But what I'll talk about a bit first is my other role that I spend 50% of my time doing as well. Another acronym we'd like to throw in there, the RMT, Research Management Team, which is basically me operating as like the front door for the service. Looking over the referrals that are coming into the service, completing triage assessments before someone is referred into the Andy Clinic. So just to give a bit of background of how, this is very fun, clicker. There we are. Just to give a background of how we kind of set ourselves up as the Andy Clinic those many years ago, as a new sort of mental health service within the Berkshire landscape. We knew we didn't want to be another like front door, complicating an already fairly complex landscape of different services and front doors and referral forms and processes. So we tried to kind of sit ourselves into the processes that already existed, namely like the CPE, or the common point of entry, we refer to it as, maybe like a SPA, single point of access, other areas might call it, where all referrals will come into from GPs, schools, families, young people themselves. So I sit in there, I've got a contract with CAMS CPE there, completing those initial triage assessment call assessments with young people, specifically trying to pick up people that would look suitable for support with us as the Andy Clinic, those with mild to moderate mental health difficulties. Also looking out for people that would be suitable for the research trials that we've been running. So recently the ones for panic disorder like PANDA, or the Aussie and COCAT studies, and in the coming sort of months and years looking for young people suitable for like the OCD trials that we might be setting up. So I'll be sat in there, completing those triage assessments alongside other colleagues within CAMS, and then referring them on to the suitable service, whether that's us as the Andy service or another service that's better suited, whether it's another Tier 3, Tier 2 service or signposting somewhere else. We found this has worked really well for the past few years that we've set it up, and the past few years I've been doing that. Most importantly for families, we found that it helps keep like a single point of access for families, instead of them themselves having to work out where they should refer themselves to and looking up different websites and everywhere, just referring into that single point of access. They can get a fully comprehensive assessment that points them in the right direction for the right support, and keeps a seamless referral process for them as well, instead of completing like 5 different referral forms to different services and hoping some of them come back to you. For us as a service, it's worked really well as well, so we find that 95% consistently year on year over that of those referrals are then suitable for treatment and support with us as a service after we've then done our fully comprehensive diagnostic assessment, which is then saving our resources, people in the service, CWPs and other practitioners, not spent sort of fielding those random referrals that will be coming in. And then also importantly, as a research-ready service, this is helping us with research as well. So it's helping us identify suitable research participants. So recently, as I mentioned, like the PANDA study, looking at young people experiencing panic disorder and being able to offer that research intervention, that research study for them, to be offering that intervention. And even research studies that are taking place at point of referral. So Stadia was another sort of nationwide study that some people might have been involved with as well, looking at improving like a referral process itself for young people in a service. Another thing that we've set up, and the research ready service gives us sort of that flexibility to do and set up, is like our joint referrals meeting that we have. So we run this weekly, where ourselves as a service within Berkshire, along with lots of other mental health services within Berkshire, will meet all together. Different like Tier 3 services, anxiety and depression pathways within CAMS, as well as other like Tier 2 services like mental health support teams and getting help and early help services. And we utilise this sort of meeting to be sharing referrals between teams, where we can discuss them together if we're wanting to like step up a referral to Tier 3 support, or maybe step down a referral to Tier 2 support from that Tier 3 team. And again, this is something we've been doing for the past couple of years that we've also found has been working really well. Again, importantly for families, it's helping prevent that ping-ponging of referrals that can unfortunately end up happening, where you might refer a family, you do a bit of an assessment, refer them to one service, they sit on their wait list for a bit of time, and then they get to an assessment there and realise maybe they're not the best suited service, they get sent to another service, and it's a really uncomfortable situation for young people and families to be in that we want to try and avoid. This meeting avoids that as much as humanly possible, where all the teams can sit down together, discuss the young person, I think present what the presenting difficulties are, what sort of support they're wanting to seek. The teams can then ask questions directly there, and we can have a clear plan moving forward to that young person. Instead of me having to go back to a young person I supported with going, oh, I want to try and refer you here, but they might not accept the referral, I can get back and say, yes, I've discussed with that team, and they're definitely going to take the referral on. They think they're really well suited for supporting you, which gives a much better message back to families. For us as a service, I've very briefly put down here reduces admin, which I think is a crude way of putting it down. It does reduce like admin, which I'm sure we'd all appreciate, instead of completing those really long, lengthy referral forms I'm sure we've all encountered before. It kind of avoids that because we've done all the important discussion. Those referral forms are all about information gathering. The meeting does that information gathering, and we can send a nice streamlined referral through. And also same as that sort of emailing back and forth, instead of me emailing one team, having an email correspondence, or they're not the right team, emailing another team, everyone's all together to discuss there. And again, with research as well, again, as a research-ready service, it's helping us identify suitable research participants as well. That sort of almost informal discussions with other teams. We can let them know what sort of research projects we're currently operating or might be operating in the future. Those teams can then be helping us look out for people that might be suitable for that as well. So, for example, we've got lots of young people suitable for the PANDA panic research trial through that meeting. I'll also very briefly talk about the other side of my role that Claire was going to talk about, so you get double of me today, as being a CWP in a research-ready service, and how that can open up different avenues for sort of other things that might not usually be sort of offered on the CWP course. So I think apparently most clearly in like my day-to-day, it offers me to do some different interventions, so namely the ACTA intervention that Ray mentioned earlier. That intervention was studied and developed through the Andy Clinic that we now continue to offer to this day for young people we find most often offering support with social anxiety, a big sort of gap in the population. It was previously like a high-intensity Tier 3 intervention for social anxiety, adapted for those experiencing more mild to moderate symptoms of social anxiety. Gives slightly more variability in the different varieties of different treatments we're able to offer, as well as things like offering support for like panic and agoraphobia symptoms as well, I've done recently too. Another thing that the Research Ready clinic has offered us the flexibility to do is set up different connections with other teams as well. So it's a very recent collaboration we have with the immunisation service here within Berkshire. That I coordinated through my role of sort of liaising with lots of other teams. We find that if someone's presenting with a needle phobia, immunisation phobia, as lots of us in the service will offer, is the graded exposure intervention, the idea of using habituation and that step plan to help support someone overcoming that phobia they're experiencing. We'd find as a service we're getting a bit stuck at that step plan there, as we're able to do the sort of psychoeducation and do those early steps that might involve sort of explaining someone's photos or videos, but then get a bit stuck with the sharp end of actually helping someone support them with exposing themselves to physical needles or having that immunisation done. And we got contacted by the immunisation team that kind of had the opposite problem, is they were very capable of doing the sharp end, giving the interventions, giving the immunisations themselves, but didn't necessarily have that sort of psychological input in their team to support the young people themselves with the phobia they were experiencing, which kind of led to this collaboration I'm sure you can see where we're going of how we work together to support those young people. So just to give a recent example, anonymised case study of someone, the first person actually we supported through this collaboration, EB, like a 17-year-old who was referred to us through that team, someone they'd tried to support with their immunisations but weren't able to due to that phobia they were experiencing, led to them sort of not getting those immunisations done that they really wanted to for their physical health, but also stopped them going out of the country to get those jabs you need to go to other countries sometimes. So we worked together that way. So one of our therapists did the first few sessions of the sort of standard graded exposure intervention, working up that hierarchy of exposing to say like photos and videos of needles to go through the intervention as we would usually. And then it was around session 5 and maybe 6 that we then had one of the nurses from the immunisation team come in to then do the sharp bit, as that team keep referring to, so it's just kind of rubbed off on me, the sharp bit of that intervention. So they were to come in and do lots of really fantastic exposure tasks in the session themselves. They were able to bring in the sharps and the needles and the bucket and trays and all that sort of stuff that they would usually use to do those different exposure tasks in the session itself, which the young person fed back was really helpful and found really beneficial. And kind of the proof is in the pudding. Shortly after they sort of finished our intervention, they were able to get that meningitis vaccination they've been avoiding for so long, and they're booked in the next coming weeks, I think, for their next one as well. That's kind of the end of our presentation there to talk about Research Ready service and working as a CWP in there. If you have any questions about any stuff, again, we'll be around for the rest of the day as well if you'd like to come find us. But otherwise, thank you guys. No.
Hello, us again. So the next session is the Children's Wellbeing Practitioner role in Young Somerset, how we use data to improve service delivery, the journey so far, by Ruth.
Ruth will be talking about how they use the data to drive and improve the day-to-day running of the service and in the planning future. This story is of where they started, where they are now, and where they would like to be in the future.
Hi, I'm Ruth, and as you can see, there's actually 3 of me. because I didn't want to come up on my own. So I'm accompanied by Lisa, who's our head of service, and Fiona, who is one of our team leaders. So as we said, we're going to talk today about how we've used data to inform our practice at Young Somerset. So just a quick, I know this is, I'm teaching grandmother to suck eggs here, I realise, but why is data important? It's important because we can evidence our work and fulfil our contractual obligations. And obviously we can feed back to the ICB about what an amazing job we're doing. We can improve performance because it allows us to pick up things that otherwise we wouldn't do. Young people and families can trust that we're an evidence-based service. And very importantly, we can celebrate success, because I think sometimes, you know, practitioners, they really do need that evidence of success, that they've made a difference to young people. And we can identify and solve problems quickly. So Lisa's going to give a little bit of a talk about where we began and where we are now in terms of our team.
So Young Somerset is the largest youth work charity in Somerset. It's been going for 25 years. And back just before 2018, our chief executive was looking at growth and expansion and met Jonathan Parker, and here we are today. 2 CWPs were trained, and we had 2. And over the course of the last few years, we now have a team of over 50. I came into this role, previously was a head teacher, came in as a trainee EMHP. A job came up in the organisation for head of CWP service. And I thought, oh, that looks interesting. And took the role, well, was interviewed for the role, took the role, I didn't just take it. It was a really rubbish interview as well, so I'm really lucky to be here. Was heading up the CWP service. We've got the MHST team as well, which is in partnership with Somerset CAMS. My colleague who was head there left, and I said to Nick, well, should we combine the 2 and see how it goes? So now we have a team of mental health practitioners, EMHPs, CWPs, and we also have a really wide non-clinical team which we've built up due to attrition funding for trying to recruit, as we know, to qualified roles where there are gaps. Data at the time of when I took the team on was a little bit sketchy. IAPTUS was being used really well for recording notes, but that other level was not there. We met with Holly Gay from Exeter, who is our guru, and he's amazing. And if you ever get a chance to work with her, please do. And the wider team at Exeter have really helped us to shape where we are today. So what we have now is a really robust data system that we can use to plan our journey forward and know that it's done really effective, rather than, oh, shiny new thing, let's do that. And I think that's me.
So we just wanted to start with a couple of, now that we've got that really good data collection, we're able to produce nice whizzy things like the graph you can see there. And that's just some evidence of our ESQ completion rate and goals and things like that. Next slide. Yeah. And also this one as well shows how in the vast majority of cases, over 50% of young people in interventions are saying that they've felt an improvement in there.
Can I just add a bit here?
Yeah.
What we're doing as well is we're actually doing a 3 and a 6 month review with young people, because we're getting a lot of anecdotal reports from young people who say, actually this treatment really worked, but at the time I didn't think it did. So it's really adding weight to what we can produce and demonstrate is effective.
And that was just a little bit of feedback as well, because obviously we want to collect quantitative as well as qualitative data. So those were just some comments. But I know the break is next, so I don't want to spend more time than necessary. So one of the things that I do is I have a sort of responsibility for looking at the data, and I get a really comprehensive report from our data officer, Alexis, who's brilliant. What I can do, I can dive into that data and then so some of the examples here are not, I'm not saying that everybody does this, but it means I can pick up if a particular person, say, is not following the care pathway. And I sort of identified that there were sort of anomalous things happening there. It allowed us to pick up things like whether people were using the DNA policy correctly, or whether there was missing information that meant our demographic information wasn't as good. So there's just some examples there.
I'd say something about that. It's as a CWP and as a team leader, it's really important to us to know what we're getting right and what we're not getting right. And it's quite a challenging job, being a trainee CWP. I can see some colleagues in the room that I trained with at Exeter, people who taught me from Exeter Uni, which is really nice. But we all know it's quite challenging. And so having that data coming back at you with somebody saying, oh, we need to do something about this, because it's such an array of stuff to learn on the job, is really valuable. And it's helped all of us improve our practice massively.
This was just, I think it was Catherine mentioned earlier about the real rise in need for our service. And what this graph shows is when we started, we were picking up practically every young person that came to us. But over the years, and this is sort of a victim of our own success, we've had more and more requests where actually they've not led to an assessment or an intervention. But you can see that it's that sharp line that's coming down, which is evidence that we're now starting to address that issue so that the requests we get are more appropriate for our service. So that's just another sort of evidence of how the data has really fed into that.
What the data has helped us to do as well is, like I say, we're in partnership with CAMS for our MHST teams, but actually we meet twice weekly with CAMS colleagues in SPA to discuss those young people who aren't deemed to be able to access the support that our practitioners can offer. So there's a really good handover there, and vice versa for colleagues in CAMS to hand over to us. And really interesting to hear about the portal work, because that's something that's happening in Somerset as well. So we may pick your brains over coffee.
So these are just some of the things we've done to address efficiency. So we realised that what was on our website wasn't necessarily as clear as it could be, so we've done that. We've looked at our IAPTUS forms, and we, at the moment, having them automatically uploaded, which has saved loads of time for one of our teams. And also our Wellbeing support team, who are the non-clinical team, are now making the check-in calls, because we also worked out that was taking up a lot of practitioner time. We introduced, because we had a big waiting list, and we thought, well, how can we address that? So one of the things we did, we started a triage, which is prior to triage. You can adopt the word if you like, not precious about it. Which meant that a few of us were looking at cases coming in and making a very quick decision. So if it was clearly not suitable, we were being able to then direct that to another team to signpost. But it just meant that we were able to get through things quicker. We have our triage system, which is our clinical supervisor, and as you can see there, various other people taking part in that as well.
Just to add to that, it's the real value in that is for the young people that are coming into the service. So it means that they're not sitting waiting for us to do something on their behalf, that we're addressing what they're presenting with, and if we're not going to be able to help them, we're taking them somewhere where they need to go next, rather than just letting them wait.
So I said I have regular meetings with our data officer, where he regularly updates the information and we review it. And as I say, that means that things can be spotted quite quickly. Also, our Wellbeing support team, they're also looking at their data on a monthly basis and picking up any anomalies. So, because what used to happen was occasionally people would kind of get lost in the system. So what we've put in place means that we've very much reduced that happening, which is really good. And the other thing is obviously updating the team regularly about data. Lisa's already mentioned that I attend meetings twice weekly with CAMS, where we can take things to them that we think might be suitable for them. They can bring things to us that they're thinking of sending to us. And I would say, Fiona, you'd agree, that's had a massive impact on the type of referral that we're getting, being much more appropriate for that low intensity CBT, because before that we were probably getting ones that weren't quite suitable. I'm struggling to see that a bit. Yeah, ICB. So Lisa, you have regular meetings with the ICB?
Yeah, they're my best friends now. I actually did meet our commissioner yesterday for coffee. Well, we arranged a venue and then she couldn't come, so it was virtual, but it was all good. And that's been really good for me. The first part of my role was actually establishing connections and meeting with our commissioner and actually just being really open when there was a problem, just saying it right from the word go, rather than waiting for a quarterly review where something had got bigger or perhaps trying to hide something, because actually that we've got a real trusting relationship now. And I'd extend that probably to like the university as well, actually to kind of saying to them where we've had pitfalls in things, where we need some support with data, and actually wider. So it is quite hard sometimes to say to your commissioner, we're not going to hit that target, but this is the rationale as to why, and show them the data, and it's been absolutely fine so far.
And the other thing that we do is myself and we have a senior clinical supervisor. We regularly attend the Southwest Community of Practice meetings, which is really, really useful.
Just want to say as well, we do have clinical supervisors on our team now, and that's new for us, and the data will show it, and that's to do with data as well and our growth, actually keeping our supervision team kind of in-house. We do still purchase outside supervision, which is still really great and really valued, but actually they're part of this data as well. So about caseloads, the rationale behind caseloads, and why we need to do group work, and all the wider work that goes on with that. So they're part of our wider management team as well to help build this picture.
And it's also going to massively help us with registration, having our own in-house supervisors. So another thing we did was we realised that there's quite a lot of drifting cases, and that was because we didn't have a consistent and robust DNA policy. But we've now developed that. That's really clear on our website, and also that's what practitioners are letting people know when they first start working with them. And we've recently had a case, haven't we, where that came in very, very handy, because somebody was not pleased about not getting a service, and we were able to demonstrate really clearly that we had made it abundantly clear, this is our policy, and actually you have, failed to turn up 3 times. So this is, we've made it very clear, and that's been really helpful. Yeah.
The DNAs are a problem. I'm sure everybody in the room's probably experienced it, that you think you've got a week's work set up and actually lots of it is gaps. So that's what we've really tried to attend to. And for our CWP team, they felt really happy. We're all really great that we've got this really simple, consistent message that we can give people and say, this is the expectation, we have to work within this so that we can do our best for you. And it's reaping rewards already. We are having fewer DNAs, I think, so that's good.
Yeah. We've got 2 new roles. We've got a new role as well called a Wellbeing Navigator, who's going to be assigned to young people whilst they're waiting to access their treatment, and part of their role is to talk through what CBT is and to make sure they're ready. So we're hoping that will have impact on our DNA. So this has helped inform us to recruit to other roles.
I'm just going to quickly go through the last one, because I know we've been given our 1-minute warning, but everyone else ignored it. So the current expectation is that once allocated, the assessment should take place within 2 weeks, and an intervention can be between 2 and 6 sessions. And we're working hard to try and keep people to that. But moving forwards, the ICB have required that we are carrying out our assessment within 4 weeks, which I think is going to be absolutely brilliant for young people because they will know much sooner whether or not they're suitable and not sit on a waiting list to then be told, sorry, our service isn't the right one for you. So the allocations are now more efficient because we've moved into 4 different areas and we have someone who's responsible for allocating. That came about, didn't it, as sort of we were trying to be across the whole county and that was getting muddled. So data was telling us that as well. Is there anything you want to add to that, Fiona?
I just say,
Okay.
ironically, Somerset County Council has gone from 4 areas to 1 council, and we've actually gone from 1 area to 4. But we're right, they're wrong.
That was just a little bit about caseloads. So I won't sort of dwell on that one because that's just about having expectations, clear expectations of caseloads. What was the next slide? Oh. So we've finished just in time.
It's upside down, so it doesn't mean anything.
The sign's upside down. If anyone's got any questions, then we are around for the rest of the day. So thank you very much.